Hello and welcome. My name's Stephen, and I was a man who learned he had breast cancer in his mid-50s. I'm now happy to say that I'm cancer-free for more than 2 years now, so there's hope for you. I think I know why you're here. Um, Either you've been diagnosed or somebody close to you's been diagnosed, a man with breast cancer, and like me, you jumped on YouTube and found there was very little information specifically pertaining to men. There's lots of information for women, and that's understandable. Let me tell you why. Male breast cancer is quite rare compared to breast cancer in women. To give an idea, around 1 in 9 women present with breast cancer during their lifetimes. And that's quite high. Um, that's like 10% almost. In men, it's only 1 in 900. So that's only like 1% chance of a man presenting with breast cancer during their life. So I jumped on YouTube, I looked around. I wanted to get some feeling for the cancer journey once I was diagnosed from a man's perspective, and it was just very little. So in this video, I'm going to take you through 5 steps leading up to surgery, basically, from when I first detected all the way up until surgery. And I hope that I can be with you during your journey, and by me sharing my journey, I hope that I can allay some of your fears about the whole process. So the first thing I want to talk about is the actual detection. Let me first say the mortality rate for breast cancer in men is quite a lot higher than women, mainly because of late diagnosis. I just I became aware of a lump behind one of my nipples more than a year. I can't exactly say when, but way more than a year before I actually went to see the doctor about it. I had gynecomastia. Well, I still have gynecomastia, but I got gynecomastia as a teenage boy, like a lot of boys do get. So that's when your hormones are going a little bit crazy. And in roughly half of boys, actually, some breast material does develop because of this kind of estrogen testosterone wild swings during puberty. With most boys, it goes away after 6 months or a year or two. With me, my nipples were had like lumps in them. They were painful to touch well into my 20s. My half brother, who's a lot younger than me, had his gynecomastia surgically removed in his early 20s. And I wish somebody had told me about that, to be honest, when I was a teenage boy. Um, so I feel this lump, and the first thing I do as a man is go into denial. I'm thinking, well, maybe it's just a throwback from the gynecomastia. Maybe that was like kind of, we used to call them stonies. Maybe one was just redeveloping. I don't know. Maybe I'm going through hormonal changes as a man in his 50s, kind of male menopause or something like that. I don't know. But I chose to just ignore it. But it eventually got to a point where I knew I had to do something about it. Now, if I had not known at least one man, which I did, a work colleague from years ago, if I'd not known one man who had breast cancer, I probably would have left it even later. About 9 or 10 months into this whole lump detection thing, breast cancer started to cross my mind, and I began to fret a little bit about it, but I was still too afraid to go see the doctor. Then I was offered a job for which I had to move across the country. I live in South Africa, so I moved from Johannesburg, which is inland, down to the coastal city of Cape Town. And I started this new corporate job. And at that point, I started to have quite a bit of redness. There was some pain that used to come and go. And I started to get concerned, but the new job required that I had to work for 3 months probation before I was made permanent. And I didn't want a cancer diagnosis to stand in the way of permanent employment. So I chose to leave it for another 3 months until I got that letter to say, yay, you're now a permanent employee, before I set up an appointment with my GP. So the second thing I want to talk about is that first appointment with a GP. So, I remember going in, I had a couple of things I wanted to talk to her about. It was a new GP for me, being in a new town. I'd been recommended from a friend of mine that lives in the area. And she was a wonderful woman. And I'm going to talk about synchronicity through my videos as we go along. But the first kind of synchronicity for me was that the doctor that I went to see had spent most of her life as an ultrasound doctor. So after we had talked about the other things I wanted to talk about, kind of as a last minute thing, I said, "Oh, don't you want to have a look at this? I'm a little bit concerned." And I mean, when I took my shirt off, I mean, I think she could have immediately see because the nipple was a little bit out of shape. And after she felt around a bit, she just said to me, "It is something to be concerned about, and I need to get it checked out as soon as possible." So, being from the ultrasound industry, she knew a lot of people, and managed to push me in for a mammogram, an urgent mammogram, the following day. So Monday I went to see her, and Tuesday morning I went for a mammogram and an ultrasound. So the third thing I want to talk about is the testing process. So the first obviously was mammogram. Was an interesting experience because I'm just this yeah, lonesome man amongst a lot of women lining up for their appointments. It was kind of, I want to say, a fun experience because it's quite difficult to do a mammogram on a man because you have to squeeze these little man boobs between those two plates, and it takes some jiggling around and adjustments and up and down and a couple of attempts, and it was a little fun. The technician was fun and made the experience almost enjoyable, if you like. It's not painful; it's just uncomfortable because the breasts are small. It's not like I can imagine a woman having a mammogram must be pretty uncomfortable. So after the mammogram, then I had the ultrasound. So they took the results to the ultrasound doctor, and I waited in the ultrasound room for a few minutes. And when she came to see me, I said to me, well, she'll send the results back to my doctor, but it looks quite nasty. She's going to recommend to our GP that I start taking the next steps towards a biopsy. About a couple of hours later, my GP called me, and she had set up an appointment with a local surgeon, not far from me again. And this comes back to the synchronicity because if I had still been living in Johannesburg, these appointments would have meant traveling 30 minutes or having to wait for days for an appointment. Whereas here, uh, in the area that I live, there are just the most amazing cancer diagnosis and cancer treatment centers dotted all around the area. I haven't driven further than 25 minutes for an appointment for any specialist. And I've never had to wait more than 2 days to have a test done or see a doctor or any sort of specialist at all. Monday, GP, Tuesday, mammogram, ultrasound, Wednesday, I go and see the surgeon. And obviously he had all the results and he got all the info. And he's a man of few words, which I really appreciate. A really very pleasant guy, kind of youngish. My experience subsequent to my surgery was, if anybody asked me, "Oh, who was the surgeon?" and I mentioned his name, especially women kind of like swoon and say, "Oh, that doctor," yeah, because he's quite well known and quite popular with the female staff in the medical industry. So anyway, I got there and he was looking at the results, and he said, well, we have to do a biopsy. It doesn't look good. Let's do a biopsy. So that kind of surprised me because I didn't expect the biopsy to happen immediately. I thought he was going to send me to some other place to do biopsy. But anyway, we went to his little room next door, and the nurse came in and assisted. They first gave local anesthetic because I think without that, the biopsy would be really painful. And even with the local anesthetic, the experience was a little bit intimidating, and just because I didn't know what to expect. So what happens is once the local is taken effect, he produced this kind of water gun squirty thing. I'll put a picture up. And what they do is they use an ultrasound just to make sure that they're exactly in the right place. And then they put this instrument up against where the lump is. And it's got like a trigger, and it shoots a fairly big needle into the skin, and it grabs a piece of the lump, and which they then send off for a biopsy. So he said to me that the results take a few days. So this was Wednesday, and he said to me, I mustn't have any expectations until Friday for the results. And that was frightening. That's the most frightening part for me, was that waiting for the results, because the uncertainty is the part that really gets to you. Because now you've had your name and the word cancer in the same sentence, and that's frightening enough. And not knowing whether it really is or not until the results come back just felt like an absolute eternity. Right, so the third thing I want to talk about is the actual diagnosis. I was expecting Friday, as I said. On Thursday, I work remotely as a project manager. So on Thursday, I had been prepping for this big new project kickoff call with a customer. Open up the meeting. I was just waiting for everybody to kind of join the meeting. I had my camera on. I was chatting to the first people that arrived in. And I looked down, and my phone, which was on silent, was flashing the surgeon's number. So, with all these new people, I had to just say, I have to take this call. And I turned my camera off, and I put myself on mute, answered the call. And my dear surgeon, the man of few words, he just said, well, the news is not good. It's come back positive, and I must just expect a call from his assistant to set up appointments for the next steps and the next tests. So the blood just kind of drained from my face. I could just feel myself like in a complete zombie zone, if you like. And terrified, but also I had to go back into this meeting. So I took a minute just to compose myself. I went back in the meeting and continued with the kickoff. To this day, I don't know how I did it. I actually don't have any memory of the meeting except for the notes that I took. And I finished the meeting, had a little cry, I think, and then I called my line manager, who I'm very grateful for, because he was incredibly supportive through this whole process. He was always there for the whole year, basically. Whenever I had to take time off or anything like that, he was there to back me up and to minimize anything on my project and that kind of thing. So for that, I'm very grateful. And not everybody has the same experience. Now that I'd received the official diagnosis, I think I kind of moved into autopilot from that moment onwards. Because I'm a project manager and I'm a career project manager, I've been doing it for so long. The only way I could cope with was to kind of start planning and timelines and milestones and that kind of thing, and and results and all the rest of it, and planning my tests and times around my work schedule. So it was just like autopilot from that point all the way to surgery. It was just straight autopilot. Right. The fourth thing I wanted to just talk about was preparation for surgery. So what happens between diagnosis and surgery? And the answer is a lot of machines and a lot of tests, the Thursday, I received my biopsy results back. Um, First of all, the following day on Friday, I went for a heart ultrasound. I guess they want to check if your heart's strong enough to manage surgery so that there's no surprises when you're under. I did blood tests. Then on the following Tuesday, so that's just a couple of days after that, I had a CT scan and MRI. The CT scan, again, I'd never had a CT scan before, so it was a new experience. I had watched tons of videos over the weekend. So I was prepared, mentally prepared for it. Once lying on the scan, they put an IV drip, which is kind of remote controlled. So they release I'm assuming it's an iodine solution as well, into your bloodstream just before they start the scan. So, you lie back on this thing and, it's this big circular scanner. And then they come over the intercom and say, okay, we're going to release the IV now. They did give me some warning of what the sensation should be, but I'll tell you anyway. First of all, for me, there was quite a strong metallic taste in the back of my throat. Um, the back of my throat warmed up immediately. The rest of my body felt like it was warming up. And then they do warn you, but your bladder feels like it wants to release. It won't, but it does feel like you need to have a pee. And this kind of sensation doesn't last maybe 5 or 10 minutes while they do the scan, and it quickly dissipates. And there's no kind of residual after effects, if you like, once you leave the CT scan. So once the CT scan was complete, I walked over to the next room where there was this giant MRI machine, which is on a completely another level. It's like walking into a sci-fi, Star Wars project, and it's intimidating. It's big, and it makes a lot of noise. So of course, the first thing is you must expect they put these heavy things across your chest, which is kind of like the sensors, if you like. You move into this tube, so it is a little claustrophobic, and it makes a lot of noise. So if anybody tells you it makes a lot of noise, just kind of dial it up a little bit, because it really does make a lot of noise. I have seen videos where some facilities give you earphones, headphones, or noise cancelling headphones or something like that to help with the noise, because it's quite frightening. A lot of whirring, a lot of clunking, and some weird sensations. I was a little taken aback by, during a part of the process, it felt like the muscles at the base of my spine started to tingle, and I was concerned, and I almost like put up my hand to say stop. And I thought, well, I'll just trust the process, which I'm glad I did, because I did ask about it after, and they said, yeah, some people do experience some muscle tingling, so that's just a warning for you. But all in all, it's once it's finished and you look back on it, it wasn't a bad process at all. It was just that kind of fear of the unknown, and I hope that I can help you through that as well, because it's not a bad process at all. And then 24 hours before surgery, there's another test that they may or may not do for you, and that's a PET scan. So that's the you got to go to a nuclear medicine facility. Again, this is the furthest I had to travel, and was literally 20 minutes from me. And there's only one in my area, and I can imagine if I was living somewhere else, I may have had to plan an appointment weeks ahead possibly, and drive across the city through traffic to get there. So basically, the essence is to see if the cancer has spread to the lymph nodes. So in order to do that, they first do another 3D X-ray similar to a CT scan to just pinpoint exactly where the lump is. And they need to know that because they inject a radioactive isotope into the lump, and they need to get it in the exact right place. And this is one of the things they didn't warn me about. First of all, I didn't know why I was there or what this thing was. I just was told to, be there at this time. So then they inject this radioisotope liquid into the lump, and that was pretty painful. I wasn't prepared for it, and they didn't warn me or anything like that, and it was a bit of a shock. Um, but again, autopilot, get through that. Then you wait 45 minutes. I went for breakfast, and then what they do is you come back, and then you get pushed into this scanner, which is similar to an MRI, where they then do some detection on the radioisotope to see where it's lighting up. And as I understand it, I may be wrong. As was explained to me, the cancer cells use a lot of energy, and it uses glucose um, to burns glucose in that process, and the radioisotope lights up those areas where there's a lot of glucose activity, glucose conversion activity. For me, unfortunately, it did show in my lymph nodes. So what they do is then they mark the point under your arm uh, where the which where that lymph node is located, to give the surgeon guidance when you're on anesthetic. And then they also are present during the surgery, and they they then use an instrument to help guide the doctor to that lymph node. Uh, so that news did change my treatment regimen, because the size of the lump and the grade of cancer from the biopsy, um, the surgeon said to me it would probably just be surgery and radiation, but because it had spread to the lymph nodes, it raised the chances of chemotherapy. But he wouldn't commit to that until the biopsy of what they remove under surgery, until those results are back. Then the fifth thing I want to talk about is, for me, was the hardest part, um, and that is telling my family, because at that point I was living on my own. I've got two daughters that live not close to me, but fairly close to me, and I kept this process from them until I had my results, and that part was difficult. And in hindsight, I, I I think I was very emotional. I had a lump in my throat. I battled to talk, and I think it kind of increased their uncertainty and fear in the process as well. The whole psychology behind this, I want to just say again how I went onto autopilot. And I think it was pretty much on autopilot for the rest of the process, through chemo and radiation. I just decided I'm just going to, whatever they tell me, that's what I'm going to do. Whatever they recommend, that's what I'm going to do. And that helped me immensely through the whole process at the end of the day. So, in conclusion, Uh, I am cancer free for 2.5 years now. I'm very happy about that. And that can be your story as well. And my hope is that that works out to be your story. Um, I hope I've done something to allay some of your fears. And I hope there are men out there that will come and find this video, that I can, you know, spend my time through their journey as well, just allaying some of the fears around, the whole male breast cancer process. And well, until next time, see you later.